You know, after looking back on this video, it's come to my attention that I'm a real brainlet for making a review and bringing up some video game beef with a game studio that's already been desecrated by the thousands of far more intelligent game reviewers. But everybody starts somewhere, so I would say that this video is to get my feet wet, but based on how extreme my opinion is, it seems more like I'm drenching myself in the gallons of Bethesda fanboy tears, and this is probably the happiest I'll ever be because of it. The only issue is, the other reviewers decided to tear apart a game that any living organism could see was horrible, and I decided to use the same brain that thinks PopCat is still funny to call out a game that's been given multiple awards and 10 out of 10s by different franchises and has been praised by the masochists who enjoy the stealth genre of games. But who am I to judge? I play League of Legends and I'm a support main, so I guess masochists and I aren't too far apart to begin with. The main issue is that since the game has been praised to high hell, it's very difficult to find a lot of criticism of it online to base on my arguments off of, making it harder to write this script. Which, speaking of hard, after going through the Metacritic on this game, it seems everyone and their grandmas were popping at least a semi-chub writing these reviews, giving such an underwhelming game such praise for what most consider a bare minimum of a video game. You see, one late night, I was scrolling through my endless supply of Steam games that will never be touched, and I noticed the game Dishonored. I have vague memories of when I was a bit younger trying to play this, and ultimately having a very unfun time, most likely due to the 24/7 happy crack every young teenager is always on, leaving me pretty displeased with the stealth aspect of video games. But I've grown, matured, the days of one-handed fighter are over and done with, and my new relationship with one-handed fighter but with dagger have begun. Before we get into the actual game, I should probably explain what the game even is to begin with. Now, Dishonored is marketed as an action-adventure stealth game. Now, the reason I say marketed is because the adventure part of this game is due to its massive map size, and I would hesitate to call the experience of exploring adventuring, but more like apartment hunting, as the majority of every map is just scaling rooms upon rooms, which don't help add anything to the video game aspect, but does help if you want some interior design experience while you wait for every NPC to finish their lengthy dialogue that puts that time your mom met the friend at a grocery store to shame. And action is a term that can be slapped onto any video game under the sun, so that's not much to base it off of either. So that just leaves stealth, and while I can't joke about that completely because yeah, it's a stealth game, I can say the stealth aspect of this game happens to be the one thing saving it from any further criticism on gameplay, as I'm not experienced enough with the genre, and the genre seems very self-explanatory, so I guess you win this time, Bethesda. But don't think for a second I'll be going easy on the aspects of stealth I do understand, because your version of stealth leads this game to be played in two ways: the waiting game or the drunken bar fight, and sadly you did the drunken bar fight aspect better, which doesn't surprise me, as you seem to be experienced with beating down the other way. Now that we've clarified that yes, Dishonored is indeed a video game, we can get into this story, and while I can't say it's a bad story, it certainly isn't unique, which in all honesty is sort of the running trend in this game, since their antagonists are carbon copies of Dr. Evil, both in looks and brainpower, as their diabolical plan is more predictable than calling these guys Dr. Evil in the first place. Honestly, the more I think about it, the story really isn't the issue I have with this game. It's not saving it by any means, but it's not actively ruining it. Well, sometimes it isn't. The first thing we see is our character, Corvo, the bodyguard to the Empress, arriving back via a boat to a somewhat dirty and desolate looking steampunk-esque place. When you arrive, you're greeted by Emily, the daughter of the Empress, who we can already tell has a very father-daughter-like relationship with Corvo. Along with seeing Emily on your way to meet the Empress, you meet the Overseer, a character that takes all those years of don't judge a book by its cover and throws it all out the window, as he looks evil, talks evil, and wow, is evil. Finally, after meeting the Empress, we hear there's a plague going on in the city of Dunwall, and that turns out to be the reason that Corvo was out to begin with. After a very brief conversation, a group of teleporting ninjas attack both Corvo and the Empress. As you fend them off, they remind you how powerless you are by stunning you and stabbing the Empress. They run away, taking Emily, and you are left with the dying Empress in your arms. The Overseer and another small bald man blame you for the murder, and then boom, title screen. After being awoken in the prison, we are thankfully explained the entire plot because Corvo is supposed to be executed in the coming days, and keep this explanation in mind because it's a surprise tool we'll use later. You're given a key to your cell, escape, and meet with Samuel, the boatman, who takes you to a small part of Dunwall where you can hide away. Here, you meet Pierre, the guy who will make your weapons and gear, and two other guys whose names are extremely forgettable, but just know that they want to overthrow the government, so they are obviously the good guys. You were sent on mission after mission in order to kill higher-ups in the government, steal information, save Emily, and in a crazy turn of events, get betrayed, and have to kill the two guys who you thought were helping you the entire time. Overall, pretty average. Can't complain too much about the story. The only things I can badmouth about it was how obvious the twists are, but then again, I don't seem to be the targeted audience, as I seem to read into things and critique stories and games past the "holy crap, did you see that dude's head come off" level of thought. Regardless, I haven't mentioned probably the most important part of the story: the outsider. Now, the story I mentioned before would be considered pretty boring, even by the standards of the audience, as previously noted. So the developers decided to throw some magic into the mix, and this magic is given to Corvo by a man named the Outsider. On the first night, Corvo is awoken to a dreamland kind of area, where he makes his way until a figure poofs into frame and calls himself the Outsider. He gives Corvo a sigil on his hand and teaches him how to blink, lets you practice this, and tells you there are more powers to be acquired via bone charms and runes. And even with all this great hospitality you've been shown, I believe the Outsider ruins this entire game for anyone who wants to be invested in the story. The way I see the Outsider is like a living spark notes for the game, as whenever you're pushed into talking to him, he seems to do nothing but recap what you've done and literally gives away and explains key points and plots, the most which, to convey the atrocity of this, I have chosen to quote the main man of reviews himself in saying,
"It's like they say in every writing class, tell, don't show, never show, showing is for the gays. This is Sharia law storytelling and you will speak when fucking spoken to."
It just goes to show how little the developers thought of their player base, where even when they have characters make decisions for motives we can only guess at, leaving some of the plot to our imagination, the Outsider comes in and gimps it entirely by explaining exactly what happened, why it happened, what's going on, and so forth. It's like going to a fortune teller that only tells you what you're going to have for dinner for the rest of your life. Yeah, it's information, but nothing I needed to know about. Either way, I'm happy to say the criticism of the story ends here, as while it's not something I enjoyed, it doesn't hold a candle to the dumpster fire that is the gameplay. This game bored me to death, then revived me just to make sure that I can't even enjoy the sweet release of death of not playing this game, only to bore me to death again. Like the healer that brings you back to 1 HP constantly but never goes any further, just to make sure you know that they own you and you can't stop them from doing so. I think it speaks to how much I hated this game, as when I recorded the footage for the first time, it got corrupt and I lost all of it. And while I may be somewhat of a video game masochist, I don't hate myself enough to play through this game again, so I bribed my brother to record the footage for me, which I guess makes me a masochist and a sadist now, since he actively tried to get out of it whenever he could. Either way, the gameplay left me seeing red, and while I can say it was a nice change of pace from the gray that the rest of the game is covered in, it still didn't make the game enjoyable. For starters, I understand stealth is a niche genre where only the most dedicated player base seems to enjoy it, but for the love of the Outsider, can we not be forced to sit through every single NPC conversation just not to get caught? The main weapon used in Dishonored is this sword dagger thing that Corvo has, and while there are other weapons, using them almost certainly means sounding some sort of alarm and fighting the entire city. And yes, there are grenades in a stealth game. I don't know why, and I'm pretty sure Bethesda doesn't even know why, as grenades in a stealth game sounds like putting the Ever Given into a Suez Canal. It just doesn't fit. God, I hope that's still relevant by the time this comes out. The best combination in the game is the sword and the blink, along with the perk that turns enemies you kill that didn't see you into ash, meaning you can blink behind someone, backstab them, and the evidence is gone. And when I say the best combination, I mean basically the only way to play this game in stealth. If you use a pistol or a crossbow, or God forbid, a grenade, you will have the wrath of every Mr. Clean model reject rushing to hunt you down, so the only real way to stay stealth in this game is via the sword blink combo. And because this is basically the only combo that works, it makes the game's breakneck pace emphasize way more heavily on the breakneck part, which honestly is such a shame because some of the powers have such cool ideas behind them, like summoning rats and possessing bodies, but they just alert everyone way too quickly to the point of not being viable. But that's not even the worst part about the gameplay. It being repetitive is something that I could just pass off as personal experience, but there is no way that I can pass off the amount of time you are forced to sit there and wait on NPC conversations. The main issue I have with this game is the fact that there is no way to easily double kill two NPCs having a conversation without putting all guards on high alert. So the only way to keep stealth is to sit there for 2 minutes waiting for them to stop talking just to kill them one by one. It wasn't thought out well, and it kills any sort of adrenaline that you might have from sneaking around. Along with that, it seems that guards have some sort of hive mind where alerting one, even if they don't scream or say anything, alerts every guard in a 5-mile radius and puts them on high alert, and they might even rush over. It's crazy how bad the AI is in this case. It's so strange to think about because a game that came out roughly the same time, Far Cry 3, feels like it has way better AI, and honestly, that's something I don't think I expected anyone to say when this is what we're working with.
Shit, it burns like a mother when I piss.
Either way, while it may be unfair to talk about the game's AI, considering the game is almost a decade old, I can say that compared to other games that came out at the time, the AI in Dishonored feels way too clunky, and it's either on high alert or not alert enough. There are often times where I killed someone in front of another guard to almost no reaction, and other times where I killed a guard inside of a small building or shack and guards outside somehow noticed. It's just very hit or miss, and considering a large part of what makes this game stealth is how the AI reacts to the player messing up, this part just feels so bad. And messing up the stealth AI in this game really takes a damper on the whole experience, because once you're caught, the game turns into a playground slap fight where the only outcome is either you running through all your health potions or the AI doing that thing the Hulk did to Loki in the Avengers. Don't get me wrong, there are a few levels in this game that have amazing design, like the mission to save Emily and kill the Pendletons. The mansion's huge and the guards are mostly spread out, that doing the mission fully stealth actually felt possible. Wait, why am I praising a level for doing what it's supposed to do in the first place? I think the fact that a level where I felt it was possible to do it fully stealth standing out to me so much in a stealth game shows its true colors, most of those being gray, but regardless, the game was not meant to be full stealth. You can tell me to get good all you want, but I put 20 hours into this game when the first 5 made me miserable. So if the game was engaging enough or rewarding enough to incentivize me getting good, I would have. But struggling to even open it for footage on a video I want to make shows I don't care about touching it. Overall, I think Dishonored is quite a letdown. I don't believe it's a terrible game, I just think it missed the mark when it comes to stealth. The AI feels clunky and bipolar, the weapon system is horrible because the loud guns are not meant for a stealth game, and the only combos that work in this game either suck my mana dry harder than this game sucks the life out of me, or are just way too repetitive to be fun anymore. My overall conclusion, it's not a 10 out of 10, and while I'm not going to rate the game myself, I would just like to point out how delusional it is to give this game a 10 out of 10, based on the fact that the stealth is already a niche genre and they still managed to mess it up, leading to a somewhat marketing issue. The game does not handle stealth well, and the game does not handle combat any better, with the fights feeling like a Ubisoft game of just M1 spamming and occasionally blocking. So honestly, the reason you can play it is for the cool blink stab combo, because I cannot fault that it's somewhat fun the first couple of times. If you enjoyed the game, good on you, but I don't think it's fundamentally what it's meant to be, nor did it hit the marks on what it's meant to be.